My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are looking at the concept of suffering with Christ in anticipation of vindication, in vindication of glorification, in anticipation of the adoption, which is the resurrection. And we're looking at Romans chapter 8 specifically. And remember, Romans chapter 8, 17 and following is directly parallel with 1 Corinthians chapter 15. There are extremely few commentators who disagree with that concept and that claim. So, to establish that Romans chapter 8, 17 and following was to be fulfilled in the first century is to demonstrate, prima facie really, that 1 Corinthians 15 was to be fulfilled in the first century. Now, I pointed out to you that Paul said, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time, contrasting the time in which he was living in the first century with the foregoing time. The sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that is about to be revealed. Now, again, I know how controversial the Greek word mello is, but when you look at that word analytically, when you look at it objectively, then the objections against the imminence in mello are really arguments of desperation. I've heard it recently written, or seen it written, that mello only indicates imminent if the event is going to happen within the next couple of days or the next week or so. Folks, you don't find that definition in any lexicon, period. Furthermore, you find the Greek scholars, the noted world-class Greek scholars, admitting and teaching that mello in the infinitive, even in eschatological text, indicates imminence. You know, one day what I really ought to do is just have a program doing nothing but reading quotes from some of the world's greatest Greek scholars who tell us and who comment on the imminence factor of mello. Well, I won't do that. Anyway. But there are other words of imminence found in Romans chapter 8 that demand that this suffering and vindication, suffering and adoption, suffering and resurrection was something that was to be fulfilled within a very short period of time. Not only did Paul say that the glory, i.e. the adoption, i.e. the resurrection, was about to be revealed, he said this, for the earnest expectation of the creation. That term, earnest expectation, is from a Greek word, Apokaradokeo. And it's a compound word. And the lexicons, and by the way, the lectionaries, and historically, but this Greek word carries with it the idea of standing on tiptoe with neck outstretched, looking. Now let me ask you, if you're standing on your tiptoes with your neck outstretched, are you looking for something that may not appear for a couple of thousand years? Kind of ridiculous, isn't it? This Apokaradokeo word, and oh, by the way, the next word is eagerly awaits. Well, eagerly awaits is from the Greek word Apokaradokeo and means to expectantly wait. It is a word that carried with it such imminence that if left alone, it would demand imminence. And so Paul had to go ahead later in the chapter and say, we patiently look. But you have mello in the infinitive, Apokaradokeo, which means, once again, standing on your tiptoe with your neck outstretched, and you're expecting to see what you're looking for. When you combine all of these elements, Paul's contrast between then versus his now, with mello in the infinitive, with Apokaradokeo and Epikdekomai, tough word to say, the imminence of Romans chapter 8 is all but overwhelming. It is extremely powerful. And you know, it strikes me as really, really sad when commentators, because of their preconceived ideas about the nature of the resurrection, about the nature of the coming of the Lord, what do? They come to passages like this in which imminence literally permeates the text. And they seek to mitigate an entire vocabulary of words. Oh, well, mellow can't mean imminent. And Apokaradokeo doesn't carry with it any sense of urgent looking. And Epikdekomai, that doesn't really mean that they're expecting it. Sorry, folks. Anytime your theology demands that you completely destroy, mitigate, and negate an entire vocabulary of words. And the same is done with taku, intakai, ingus. Commentators, God doesn't see time like we do. Well, he knew the day and the hour. And he had appointed a day. So, if God knew the day, and if he knew the hour, and he had appointed a day, then God can tell time really easily. It is really the height of desperation. It is so revealing of the power of preconceived ideas, the power of prejudice, the power of tradition, when commentators are willing to absolutely either ignore, alter, or deny, or mitigate that entire vocabulary of the language of imminence. And yet that is done on a regular basis. And what do they do? Well, former preterists literally mock preterists for appealing to the time text of the New Testament. Can you believe that? Isn't it sad when people reach such a point that they're willing to literally mock fellow believers who are appealing to an entire vocabulary of words to support their doctrine, and all these former preterists can do is mock at taking God's word at its meaning. That's pretty sad testimony. We're going to continue our look at Paul's motif, the New Testament motif of suffering and imminent vindication, suffering and imminent parousia, suffering and imminent resurrection. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you on the flip side.